Have you ever wondered how some of Hollywood's biggest stars made it to the top despite being critically panned for their acting? In the glittering world of classic Hollywood, talent wasn't always the ticket to stardom. Some of cinema's most enduring icons rose to fame through stunning looks, clever publicity, or sheer charisma rather than acting prowess. These celebrities didn't just overcome poor reviews, they became legends despite them. In Hollywood's golden era, a wooden performance or limited range wasn't necessarily a career killer. For some stars, these limitations became signature traits that audiences couldn't get enough of. From bombshells whose curves outshined their delivery to action heroes whose muscles did the heavy lifting, these stars prove that in Hollywood, being memorable often matters more than being technically skilled. In the shadow of Marilyn Monroe stood Jane Mansfield, a blonde bombshell who understood that in Hollywood, attention equals currency. Unlike Monroe, who possessed an undeniable vulnerability on screen, Mansfield built her career almost entirely on publicity stunts and an exaggerated sex symbol image. Studio executives recognized that Mansfield's acting range was severely limited, but her ability to generate headlines was unmatched. Mansfield's infamous wardrobe malfunctions at strategic moments and appearances with her pet chihuahuas created more buzz than any performance could. In films like The Girl Can't Help It, her cartoonish portrayal of sexuality became her trademark. Critics routinely dismissed her acting as one-dimensional, but audiences flocked to theaters anyway. Her breathless delivery and exaggerated mannerisms weren't accidents. They were calculated elements of a persona designed to keep cameras flashing. What Mansfield lacked in technique, she made up for in marketing genius. She turned her Hollywood mansion into the Pink Palace, complete with heart-shaped swimming pools and pink shag carpeting, creating a personal brand decades before social media made such strategies common. While her performances rarely impressed critics, her understanding of celebrity culture was decades ahead of its time. But Mansfield wasn't the only star to trade on looks over acting skill. The studios had perfected this formula with male stars too. Few stars exemplify the studio system's emphasis on image over acting ability better than Tab Hunter. In the 1950s, Warner Brothers recognized Hunter's all-American good looks and boyish charm could sell tickets, despite his wooden performances that critics routinely ridiculed. His breakthrough in Battle Cry established him as a teen idol despite reviews that called his performance stiff and emotionally vacant. Hunter's acting limitations were so evident that even friendly industry publications struggled to praise his performances. Instead, they focused on his blue eyes, blonde hair, and athletic build. Warner Brothers carefully controlled his public image, arranging dates with starlets while Hunter himself was closeted, adding another layer of performance to his public persona. Films like Damn Yankees showcased Hunter's limitations when paired with seasoned performers, yet his popularity soared. Teen magazines featured his smiling face on covers month after month, with little mention of his acting talent. Hunter himself later admitted, "I was a product, totally manufactured by the studio." His fame wasn't built in acting classes, but in publicity departments that understood teen audiences wanted an image to adore, not necessarily a skilled performer to admire. While American studios were manufacturing male heartthrobs, European beauty was making its own splash in Hollywood. When Hedy Lamarr arrived in Hollywood from Europe, studio executives were stunned by her exotic beauty, but quickly discovered her limitations as an actress. Billed as the most beautiful woman in the world, Lamarr's performances in films like Algiers and Samson and Delilah were often described as wooden and emotionally flat. Yet, audiences couldn't look away from her mesmerizing screen presence. Directors learned to minimize her dialogue and maximize her close-ups, letting her stunning features do the work that her acting could not. Critics often noted the disconnect between her visual impact and her performance quality. One reviewer famously wrote that watching Lamarr act was like admiring a beautiful statue that unfortunately has been asked to deliver lines. What's fascinating about Lamarr is that her most significant talent had nothing to do with acting at all. The woman whose wooden performances filled theaters was, in private life, a brilliant inventor who developed frequency-hopping technology that would later become fundamental to Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Her genius was wasted on screen where only her beauty was valued. While Lamarr's beauty masked her acting limitations, another star would use his physique to build an unlikely acting empire. Long before he governed California, Arnold Schwarzenegger parlayed his Mr. Olympia physique into a Hollywood career despite an accent so thick and delivery so wooden that studios initially doubted he could ever be cast in speaking roles. His breakthrough in Conan the Barbarian featured minimal dialogue, letting his imposing physical presence tell the story. Critics mercilessly mocked Schwarzenegger's early performances. Roger Ebert wrote that he speaks English as if he learned it from a record playing too slowly. Yet, audiences connected with his physical charisma and self-aware humor. In films like The Terminator, his stiff delivery became an asset, perfectly suited to playing a robotic assassin. Schwarzenegger's genius was turning his limitations into strengths. He chose roles that required physical presence over emotional range and delivered one-liners rather than monologues. When he told audiences, "I'll be back," they didn't care about his flat delivery. They were too busy being entertained by the action spectacle around him. His success proved that in certain genres, charisma and screen presence could entirely compensate for traditional acting weaknesses. But long before action heroes dominated the box office, silent film had its own star who traded on energy rather than technique. In the 1920s, Clara Bow became Hollywood's first true sex symbol as the original It Girl. Her vibrant energy and expressive face made her perfect for silent films where dialogue delivery wasn't an issue. When talkies arrived, however, critics quickly noted her technical limitations as an actress. Bow's Brooklyn accent and untrained approach to dialogue disappointed those who had been charmed by her silent performances. Critics who had praised her energetic screen presence now dismissed her as lacking the refinement necessary for the new era of film. One critic cruelly noted, "She can roll her eyes, but she can't roll her R's." What Bow understood intuitively was that audiences connected with authenticity and energy. While classically trained actresses of her era delivered lines with theatrical precision, Bow offered something more instinctive and modern. Her performances may have lacked technique, but they captured a youthful spirit that resonated with audiences experiencing the cultural upheaval of the Roaring Twenties. Her legacy as a cultural icon far outstripped her recognition as an actress, proving that capturing the spirit of an era sometimes matters more than mastering acting fundamentals. While Bow's energy was her trademark, another star made his name by taking energy to excessive levels. Few stars in Hollywood history were as commercially successful, yet critically divisive as Mickey Rooney. Despite being the #1 box office draw for 3 consecutive years in the late 1930s, Rooney was routinely criticized for his excessive mugging and overacting. Time magazine famously remarked that he had never appeared in a picture without mugging or overacting it. Rooney's performances in the Andy Hardy series and films like Babes in Arms feature emotional displays so exaggerated that modern viewers often find them almost comical, yet audiences of the era couldn't get enough. His hyperactive energy and outsized expressions became his trademark, turning what critics saw as technical flaws into commercially viable signature traits. What critics missed was that Rooney's overacting connected with Depression-era audiences seeking larger-than-life escapism. His exuberance offered emotional release during difficult times. While method actors might have brought subtlety, Rooney brought an infectious enthusiasm that proved more valuable at the box office. His success demonstrated that sometimes connecting emotionally with audiences matters more than earning critical respect for technical precision. Decades later, another performer would prove that mumbling could be just as effective as Rooney shouting. When Sylvester Stallone burst onto the scene with Rocky, critics were divided about his acting abilities, but united in noting his distinctive mumbling delivery. With slurred speech and a lumbering physicality, Stallone created performances that technical purists dismissed but audiences embraced. His limitations became his trademark. Stallone's early struggles in Hollywood are legendary. He was repeatedly rejected for his distinctive speech pattern and unusual look. Yet, these very qualities would define his screen presence. In creating Rocky Balboa, he crafted a character whose awkward verbal expression matched his working-class background. What might have been considered poor technique became perfect characterization. The Rambo franchise further played to Stallone's strengths, physical presence, and minimal dialogue. When he did speak, his mumbled delivery somehow enhanced the character's damaged intensity. Stallone found genres and roles where his limitations didn't matter or actually enhanced the performance. His enormous commercial success, despite technical criticisms, proved that connecting with audiences often matters more than impressing acting teachers. While Stallone built his career on physical roles, another star built hers almost entirely outside of acting. Perhaps no classic Hollywood figure better exemplifies fame without acting talent than Zsa Zsa Gabor. With a filmography of mostly forgettable roles, Gabor built her legendary status almost entirely on her flamboyant personality, 9 marriages, and talent for self-promotion. Her performances in films like Moulin Rouge and Queen of Outer Space were dismissed by critics as one-note caricatures, relying on her Hungarian accent and glamorous appearance. Gabor essentially played herself in every role, never demonstrating range or depth. Yet this limitation became her greatest asset. Long before reality television, Gabor understood that being a character was more profitable than playing one. Her trademark phrase, "Dalink," and unapologetic materialism made her a talk show favorite for decades. What Gabor intuitively understood was that Hollywood fame doesn't necessarily require great acting. It requires memorability. Her lavish lifestyle, multiple marriages to wealthy men, and quotable quips kept her in the public eye long after her forgettable film career had ended. In creating the archetype of the celebrity famous primarily for being a celebrity, she pioneered a path that many would follow decades later. While Gabor crafted her fame through personality, another blonde bombshell would achieve iconic status despite critical dismissal. Marilyn Monroe remains one of Hollywood's most enduring icons, yet throughout her career, serious critics often dismissed her acting abilities. While later analysis has been kinder to her performances, during her heyday, Monroe was frequently criticized for her breathy delivery and limited range. Her status as a sex symbol often overshadowed any discussion of her technical skills. What Monroe possessed wasn't classical training, but an authentic vulnerability and intuitive understanding of her screen image. In films like Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and Some Like It Hot, she delivered performances that played to her strengths, comedic timing, and into project both innocence and sexuality simultaneously. While method actors of her era immersed themselves in technique, Monroe created an indelible screen presence that connected directly with audiences. The public's fascination with Monroe had little to do with acting technique and everything to do with her embodiment of contradictory aspects of 1950s femininity. Her performances may have lacked the depth that critics demanded, but they captured a cultural moment in a way that technically better actresses couldn't match. Her legacy proves that cultural impact often matters more than technical execution. Speaking of cultural impact, few actors were more influential or more divisive than our next star. Including Marlon Brando on a list of actors with limited skills might seem shocking. After all, he's often cited as one of the greatest actors in cinema history. Yet, during his career, Brando deeply divided critics and audiences. For every viewer mesmerized by his naturalistic approach, another was frustrated by his mumbled delivery and rejection of classical technique. Brando's performances in films like A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront introduced a new naturalistic style that broke sharply with Hollywood traditions. Critics accustomed to the clear diction and presentational style of earlier stars often saw Brando's mumbling and improvisational approach as technical deficiencies rather than artistic choices. What makes Brando fascinating is how he transformed what might have been considered poor technique into revolutionary artistry. His refusal to clearly enunciate and his sometimes rambling performances challenged fundamental assumptions about screen acting. Whether one considers Brando a genius or an overrated mumbler often depends on whether one values technical precision or emotional authenticity more highly. While Brando divided audiences with his revolutionary approach, our next star initially faced mockery for his conventional good looks. Early in his career, Tony Curtis faced crushing criticism for his pretty boy image and limited range. His Brooklyn accent was initially considered so problematic that he was dubbed in his first starring role in The Prince Who Was a Thief. Critics dismissed him as merely decorative, a handsome face without the technical skills to back up his leading man status. Universal Studios saw Curtis's commercial potential despite these limitations, casting him in lightweight fare that emphasized his appearance rather than challenging his acting abilities. Fan magazines focused on his striking resemblance to a young Cary Grant rather than his performance quality. One critic famously dismissed an early Curtis performance by writing, "He looks good in a toga, which is fortunate as he can't deliver a line." What's remarkable about Curtis is how he eventually transcended these limitations. Unlike many stars on this list, Curtis worked diligently to improve, gradually developing genuine skill. By the time he appeared in films like Sweet Smell of Success and Some Like It Hot, he had transformed himself from a pretty face into a legitimate actor. His early career demonstrates how the studio system often prioritized marketable images over acting ability, while his later work proves that determination can sometimes overcome initial limitations. Not all handsome actors manage such a transformation. John Derek's striking good looks made him a natural for the screen, but his wooden performances quickly revealed his limitations. Cast in films like All the King's Men and The Ten Commandments, Derek delivered performances so stiff that critics often joked he should be billed as a special effect rather than an actor. Derek's most interesting cultural impact came not through his acting, but through his marriages to a succession of beautiful women whom he then photographed and promoted: Ursula Andress, Linda Evans, and most famously, Bo Derek. His career transition from mediocre actor to husband photographer-director revealed where his actual talents lay: in recognizing and marketing beauty rather than portraying emotion. What Derek understood was that Hollywood's obsession with physical beauty could launch careers regardless of talent. He parlayed his own handsome face into a brief acting career, then used his industry connections to promote his wives' careers. His story reveals how the entertainment industry's emphasis on appearance over ability creates unexpected career trajectories that sometimes lead away from acting entirely. Our next star never abandoned his acting career, but he built it on style rather than substance. George Hamilton built a career on his sophisticated image, perpetual tan, and self-aware charm rather than acting depth. Critics routinely noted his limited range and tendency to play variations of himself. Yet, Hamilton maintained a decades-long career through careful image management and an understanding of his appeal. Hamilton's performances in films like Love at First Bite and Zorro the Gay Blade displayed his limited range, but also his understanding of his audience. Rather than striving for critical respect he never received, Hamilton leaned into his image as a debonair playboy. His acting was rarely praised, but his cultural presence, that impossibly deep tan, that perfect hair, made him instantly recognizable. What Hamilton grasped was that Hollywood sometimes values a consistent, marketable persona over versatility. By embracing his limitations rather than struggling against them, he carved out a unique niche that kept him employed long after more talented but less distinctive actors had faded from view. His career demonstrates how self-awareness about one's limitations can sometimes be more valuable than talent itself. Our bonus entry takes this principle to its ultimate conclusion. For viewers who've stayed until the end, here's our controversial bonus entry. John Wayne became one of America's most iconic stars despite early reviews that frequently criticized his wooden expressions and delivery. His physical approach to acting was often described as stiff and limited, with critics noting he struggled with anything requiring emotional nuance. Wayne's genius was finding a genre, the Western, that perfectly suited his limitations. His stoic delivery and limited range became assets in portraying the taciturn cowboys and soldiers that made him famous. When he attempted to stretch beyond these roles, critics were quick to note his technical deficiencies, but audiences remained loyal to the persona they had embraced. What Wayne possessed wasn't technical virtuosity, but perfect timing, both in his line delivery and in his cultural moment. As America sought masculine archetypes during decades of war and social change, Wayne's limited but consistent screen presence provided reassuring continuity. His career proves that sometimes historical timing and perfect casting can matter more than classical training or emotional range. What all these stars share isn't a lack of talent. It's a different kind of talent than traditional acting skill. They understood that Hollywood stardom often depends more on screen presence, cultural timing, and audience connection than on technical proficiency. They found ways to turn their limitations into trademarks or wisely chose roles that minimized their weaknesses. Their stories raise fascinating questions about how we judge performance. Is an actor who perfectly executes technically challenging scenes but leaves audiences cold really better than one with limited range who creates an unforgettable cultural impact? Are we sometimes too quick to dismiss popular stars as untalented when they've simply mastered a different aspect of entertainment? Next time you're watching today's celebrities, ask yourself, which current stars might eventually be remembered more for their cultural impact than their acting technique? The answer might surprise you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, especially about our controversial bonus entry. Was John Wayne truly a limited actor, or was his seemingly simple style actually a sophisticated choice?